Hello everyone, and welcome to the Style and Color lecture. We've shown a few times how to control figure aesthetics in Seaborn, but now we're going to go over it in a more formal manner. Let's go ahead and jump to the Jupyter Notebook to get started. Alright, here we are at the Jupyter Notebook. I've gone ahead and done the usual, import Seaborn, set matplotlib inline, and went ahead and loaded up the tips dataset. Let me go ahead and show you how you can set particular styles. For instance, I can do sns.countPlot on, let's say, the sex column and pass in tips as my data. Whoops. Data equal tips. And here I have my count plot. Seaborn has a set style argument, which allows you to set the style for the rest of your plots. And if we go ahead and do Shift Tab here to check out set_style, you basically pass in a parameter for style. And it's a string. It can be dark grid, dark, white, or ticks. Let me go ahead and show you what each of these looks like. Passing in white, we'll go ahead and create a blank white background for you. If you pass in tick, or ticks, I should say, you basically get these ticks at the edge of the box. Then there's also dark grid, which gives you the original dark grid background. And then there's also what I really like, white grid, which gives you both the clarity of white, but also the grid, so you don't lose that information. You can go ahead and kind of mess around with set style and see which ones you prefer or like the best. Now, another thing you can do is remove spines. So right now you can still see, let me go ahead and set this equal to tick so it's very clear what we're doing here. So we have these spines, this top spine and this right spine, as well as the bottom and left-hand spine. If you want to go ahead and remove those, you can just say SNS spine, and it will remove the top spine and the right spine. If you want to continue removing the bottom or left spine, you can actually add those in as parameters. So it's basically top, right, left, and bottom. By default, top and right are true to be removed. Left and bottom are not true to be removed, but you can specify that you do want them removed by saying left is true and then bottom is true. This will remove basically all four spines. So if you're looking for something that's like a very clear, nice looking, polished plot, maybe you want to present it without any spines. I personally prefer spines in there, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that and keep those spines. Now let's talk about size and aspect. You can use matplotlib's PLT fig size, width, and height to actually change the size of most Seaborn plots, since they are all just basic callbacks to matplotlib. And you can also control the size and aspect ratio of most Seaborn grid plots by passing in the parameters size and aspect. Let me go ahead and show you what I mean by all this. I'm going to go ahead and call the count plot, and note that the set style, even if I delete it, will stay in place until I set a new style. But I'm going to call plt.figure and say fig size is equal to, we'll go ahead and say 12 by 3. And note that this actually overrides or is a callback when Seaborn is calling matplotlib. Matplotlib will actually set the figure size for the Seaborn plot. So you can use your matplotlib knowledge as far as figure sizing and aspect ratios here in combination with Seaborn. Now let's go ahead and touch on the topic of scale and context. Seaborn comes with a convenient set_context, which allows you to override default parameters and change font scales depending on what you're actually creating the figure for. So let's say you're going to create this figure not for a notebook, but actually for a poster. You can go ahead and say sns.set_context, and context will take a couple of parameters. It'll take context, and that's going to be a string, and it also takes a font scale. The context parameters are paper, notebook, talk, or poster. So if I go ahead and just set the context, to poster, notice that I get a much larger figure out, and the font is also larger because it assumes that you're going to be putting this on a poster. And if you're still unsatisfied with the font size, you can go ahead and add that additional argument of font_scale to a larger number, maybe 3, so it's 3 times the size of the default. And here you can actually set the context for whatever you want the figure to be in. Usually, by default, it's going to be in the context of a notebook. So you can go ahead and say notebook, and that sets the context of your figures. Alright, we've gone over just a few of the basics here. The last thing I want to talk about are palettes and colors. We've shown plots before where we actually specify a hue parameter. Let me go ahead and show an example of that. For instance, when we said SNS, lim plot, maybe we want to do total bill versus the tip, and then pass in tips as the data set. Whoops, data equals tips. So we were able to previously specify something like hue is equal to sex, and then we get these colors chosen for us, green and blue. And we've seen earlier that we can actually pass in a palette argument, and there are certain strings we can put in that essentially give you a color map. And we've seen the similar aspects for things such as the heat maps, when I put in things like magma or cool warm. Now you may be wondering, well, where do I actually find these strings? Well, you can find them by going to Matplotlib's color map page. Let me go ahead and show you how to do this with Google. You can go ahead and open a new tab and go to Google and look up Matplotlib color map, and it will take you to one of these pages. And what we're looking for is the color map documentation page. And this is usually the first link here. There's color example code. And if we come to this page, now we can see the actual color scale and the gradients, as well as the name or string name you need to pass in for the color map. So if we zoom out here, we can see these 4 color maps. These are the main color maps. But there's also sequential color maps, sequential 2 color maps, so another set, diverging color maps, qualitative color maps, miscellaneous, and those are your options as far as the strings you pass in. So for example, let's say I wanted to choose this seismic diverging color map for the hue. Then I just come over here, and instead of cool warm, I pass in seismic. Hopefully I spelled that right. And here we can now see I get this kind of purple and red, which were the colors here at both ends of this diverging color map. And you can go ahead and play around with these color maps. They're a lot of fun to play with in Seaborn to get your plot to look exactly like you want it to. Alright, you can go ahead and check out the Jupyter Notebook for style and color to get a lot more information, and check out the links in that page or in that notebook, which takes you to the official documentation, which has even more information about really controlling more of your aesthetics and your figure. But the main things to understand and know are that you can look up these palette codes with Matplotlib, looking up color maps. You can change the font size with set_context, setting context to either poster or notebook, and then changing the font scale. And then you can use plt.figure with fig size to actually change the size of your figures. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoyed Seaborn. Coming up next are some Seaborn exercises for you to do. Alright, thanks, and I'll see you at the next lecture.